So I have this conductive yarn here, which is kind of the diameter of thread more than yarn, but in contrast to normal conductive thread, which is usually 100% steel, this one is actually only 20% steel and 80% polyester. I don't know if you can see in there. And so I spun this into a thicker sort of rope that is more the diameter of regular yarn. And I have a blog post somewhere where I show how I did that, and I'll link to that somewhere. And so my friend Benedicta knit this ball that has these two rows of conductive rope in them. And the rows don't quite go all the way around. So topologically, it's just a line, and it doesn't meet back up with itself. So I can connect the two probes of a multimeter to the two ends of this row of conductive rope and measure the resistance. And you can see there it's measuring about 25 kiloohms right now. And if I squeeze on it, that drops to, well, when I squeeze hard, it looks like about 2 kiloohms. Okay. And the problem that you can see is that when I release this, now it doesn't go back up to 20 or 30 kiloohms. It sort of stays now around 6. And if I squeeze it really hard, actually I can get it down below 1 kiloohm. And if I release it again, now it's back around 3 kiloohms. And if I leave it sit for a very long time, eventually all the little steel fibers in there will sort of come back apart and the resistance will go back up to 20 or 30 kiloohms again, but it's going to take a while. So as a sensor, this is good at detecting when it's been squished or released because the resistance goes down or up accordingly, but it's not good at telling the absolute amount of pressure that I'm applying because it kind of changes as you use this thing. So what I want to do is try to use some signal processing to see if I can fix that. So I've now connected the ball to this Adafruit microcontroller, and I've connected one end of this conductive strip to an analog input pin on the microcontroller, and then I've connected the other end of the conductive strip just to 3 volts there. And then I also have a little resistor. It's a pull-down resistor that connects analog input to ground. And based on the resistance measurements that I made of this conductive strip just a moment ago, I sort of calculated that the optimal value for this resistor would be about 2 kiloohms. And I'm displaying a little inset of the graph of how I arrived at that, just mainly so I can remember later in case I need to know. And so this whole setup is battery powered and it's connected wirelessly to my laptop via Bluetooth. And I've programmed it to show up as a Bluetooth MIDI device. So you can see here, if I open my MIDI preferences, the ball just shows up automatically as a MIDI device, and I can connect to it just as easily as that. And then over here, I have a trivial max patch that is just displaying the sensor readings, which I'm streaming from the ball into my computer over Bluetooth. So you can see if I squeeze the ball, the slider moves. Okay, and the main thing that I did here is I tried to adaptively scale the sensor data so that it stays consistently within a known range. So I did that by normalizing over the last 10 seconds of the signal. So each time I read the resistance of the sensor, I subtract out the mean and divide by the standard deviation over the last 10 seconds of this signal. So here I'm displaying from -3 to +3 standard deviations, with 0 in the middle being the mean. And so subtracting the mean out of the signal has the effect of keeping the readings centered whenever the ball is relaxed. So you can see the ball is relaxed now and the sensor reading is 0. And if I squeeze the ball and do some stuff with it, and then leave it relaxed for just a moment, the sensor reading returns to 0, even though the absolute amount of resistance may have changed, as you saw earlier with the multimeter. And then dividing by the standard deviation ensures that the readings always go to the top of the range whenever I squeeze the ball. So I really get fully to the top of the range, even though, the absolute number of ohms between relaxed and squeezed may have changed, as I manipulate the ball more. So this method does have some drawbacks. For example, if I just squeeze the ball and keep it squeezed, over time the readings will tend back down towards 0 as this squeezed state sort of becomes the mean over the past 10 seconds. And then when I release the ball, the sensor readings go strongly negative there. However, then as I leave the ball in this state, the readings then tend back up towards 0, which is kind of where they should be for the ball being in the relaxed position. So one kind of weird thing that you can see is often when the ball is relaxed and I squeeze on it, sometimes it seems like the sensor reading actually goes down a little bit before it starts going up. I'm not exactly sure why it does that, but certainly it has to do with the way the conductivity of this strip changes as the little metal fibers come into contact with each other or go out of contact with each other. So I don't necessarily think that you'd be able to use this ball the same way you use, say, a violin to very precisely control pitch. Like I don't think you could play, a theremin melody or something with this ball. But I do think that you can control some parameters of music or other audio using something like this. Certainly, the up and down motion of the slider when I squeeze and release the ball is quite consistent. Okay, so after having reviewed the footage that you just finished watching, I realized that the sensors were a little bit too sensitive in the middle of the range because, as you can see, sometimes I just touch the sensor and the little slider goes kind of crazy. So I added this non-linear term into the equation, which has the effect of making the sensor less sensitive when the sensor reading is kind of in the middle. So it should stabilize that a little bit. So I think that'll help. And the other thing that I did is I connected the other conductive strip to a separate analog input on the microcontroller. And so I have a new max patch where I'm displaying that. So the conductive strip here that's on this side of the ball is connected to this slider here you can see moving, and then the other conductive strip is connected to the other slider. And as you can see, I connected these also to some music, so I'll play that. So I'm just using this to control the cutoff of these filters. And this works pretty well when I use it as a pressure sensor like this. When I start trying to hold it like this and do it, what happens often is it seems like the sensors kind of lose sensitivity, and maybe that's something else I could fix by tweaking the algorithm a little bit more. But I also think that Benedicta's original observation might be correct. This actually, in a way, functions better as a stretch sensor than as a squishing sensor. So in the future, it might be more interesting to try to develop instruments that make use of this stretching property more so than the squishing property. Anyway, that's all I've got for now, so I think that's it. Yep, see you next time.